It's Elmarko Jackson, Melvin Council's world. Maybe even a little bit of Bryson Tiller and Flory Bidunga. Jayhawks roll in Manhattan, dominate K-State for another big road win.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here with another edition of Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network. On today's episode of the show, we are recapping KU's dominant victory in Manhattan and going to get to what went down in the game, the biggest positives, the biggest negatives. We'll get to our game awards where we talk about our moments and plays of the game, as well as our game balls for the overall and what's next for KU. Let's start right here with the Jayhawks rolling in Manhattan. And this was, you had lost 3 consecutive games at K-State. And for a Kansas team that had come into this week 1-3 on the road, you go 2-0 on the road at Colorado and then at Kansas State. And, just in general, you had struggled on the road really the last 3 seasons. To do it this week was super important for this team. You're now sitting at 15-5. We talked a lot about the roadmap for success for Kansas, that could you get to 5-2 in the first 7 games? Well, they took the harder way to get there, but they did get to 5-2 to get there, and really impressive with how they're playing right now, even doing this without Darryn Peterson. Obviously, K-State had a lot of injuries and a lot of players out in this one themselves. Bashir, a good three-point shooter, was out in this one, though not the best defender. Kamari McGriff, a team who was already struggling a bit at the big man position, missing him, hurt for them. But Kansas without Darryn Peterson, the potential number 1 pick in the NBA draft, and you still won this game by over 20 points in Manhattan. So really, really impressive outing. Probably KU's best road outing of the season. And it was a close game for 25 minutes of the game, 28 minutes. And then KU started getting a little bit of a lead where it was close-ish. And then KU just rocketed to the finish line over the final, 5-6 minutes of the game. Flory Bidunga, when he went out with the 3 fouls, I think he had 8 points at that time. He finishes the game with 21 points. So he had 13 points over the final 10 minutes of the game, which is pretty indicative of Kansas as a whole. And you got a little bit of a Brandon Green move maybe from Trey White, but in a rivalry, I think that's okay. And after losing 3 straight in Manhattan, I'm totally cool with it myself. But anyway, Kansas 86-62 is obviously the final score here. So the biggest positives here for KU, I think in general, the level of play that they got, I don't know, it almost felt like segments of this game. It felt like the first half and maybe even the first 25 minutes of the game, it felt like was the Bryson Tiller part of the game. He finishes with 16 points. He was really good for KU, really aggressive, like what I saw. The kind of next stage of the game felt like it belonged to Melvin Council. He had a near triple-double, 17 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds. Then you had kind of stages throughout, you had different moments throughout where Elmarko Jackson was kind of pitching in. He had a huge game with 19 points, probably his best game since the Tennessee game. And then you had the finish from Flory Bidunga where he just kept dunking on Kansas State over and over down the final couple minutes of the game. And he finishes with a double-double with 21 and 10. And we talked about coming into this game in our preview that Kansas should dominate inside. They should dominate with Flory and Tiller. And I think it was even more than I would have hoped for. They got 37 combined points, 17 combined rebounds from their 2 big men on a combined 16 of 21. Obviously, you gave up too many offensive rebounds, specifically in the first half to Kansas State. So that was something that needed to get better. But when you're just looking at the second half alone, so KU's 2 bigs, Bidunga and Tiller, had 21 combined points on 9 of 11 shooting with 11 rebounds, while Buka in the second half had 0 points and 1 rebound. That is quite the big advantage that you got from your front court in the second half. And so that was a huge, this was a game that, assuming you can get Bryson Tiller back for next season, which I would say I hope they can, but in today's day and age of the transfer portal and stuff, you just never know where it's going to go. But ideally, this is the type of game that you point to when we're in the off season, leading to the 26-27 season, going, these are reasons why I think Bryson Tiller can develop into being an NBA player, an all Big 12 player. And this would be one of those games you'd point to and say, that right there. Like, that's what that looked like from Bryson Tiller. But yeah, Elmarko was huge off the bench. And this was a game where I thought, like, if we're going to dip into some of the negatives real quick to tie in a positive, this was maybe Jamari McDowell's worst game for KU. I mean, you can maybe throw a few games where it's like, oh, he played 4 minutes and didn't do anything, but it's like, it's hard to have too much of a judgment. Jamari was 0 for 5, didn't look super comfortable out there. And in a game where he didn't have Darryn Peterson, like, that's going to happen with role players, to be clear. Like, you're going to have some good games, some bad games. That's typically more why you're role players, not starters, because you're not as consistent. But it was unfortunate timing for Jamari to have a bad game from the standpoint of no Darryn Peterson, because you needed him to step up. But it ended up okay because Elmarko Jackson had such a good game, 19 points, 5 rebounds. That was such a huge positive for KU. And now we've really seen, again, it's inconsistent with Elmarko, but at least we're seeing it multiple times where he's having good moments and good games for KU. That makes you think, hey, maybe in the NCAA tournament, let's say you played 4 games in the NCAA tournament. Maybe Elmarko is not having a great game in all 4, but could he have one game that swings it for you? I think you have at least enough confidence there that, like, that is a possibility now, which is a good thing to kind of have here. Other positives in this one for KU, I mean, obviously the 2-point dominance was pretty impressive for KU. Like, in the end, they did not shoot well from 3. K-State hits 10 threes, which was a much better defensive number for KU in the second half. But overall, KU goes 27 of 42 on 2-point shots. K-State was 11 of 32 on 2-point shots. That is a giant difference there. KU was able to get to the free throw line consistently. KU was able to outscore K-State in the paint 46-18. So that is a gigantic difference. The interior presence was such a huge difference. And I also think that KU did a really good job controlling the tempo in this game. K-State's a team who wants to play really fast. Like, you look at Kansas on the season, they came into this one 196th in the country in adjusted tempo rating. So they're more of like kind of an average tempo grade team. K-State came into this one 17th in the country. And I haven't seen the exact number of possessions yet from the game, but it's clearly a game that felt like it was, especially in the second half as it was going on, like where there were half court settings, and that was always going to be an advantage for KU. Now, if we do want to sprinkle in some negatives, like I said, McDowell had a rough game, but Elmarko stepped up for him. The defensive rebounding was not good, but that's specifically more of a first half thing. Like, if we look at the first half, Kansas State just dominated on the offensive glass. And that's what kind of kept them in it, that it was a 1-possession game at the break. And then in the second half, KU was able to wall up a little bit. Like, if you're just looking at total rebounds, for instance. So in the first half, Kansas had 16 total rebounds. K-State had 19. And that's with, KU missing less shots. Then in the second half, KU grabbed 23 rebounds. K-State had 9. So, like, there's a perfect example of that. But yeah, defensive rebound in the first half left something to be desired. I also thought it felt like they were switching 5 in the first half. It felt like in the second half at times they weren't switching 5. So I just feel like this is a team that, okay, there's going to be certain matchups where that makes sense, and that's okay to have in your back pocket, but I don't think that should be their main staple. And I don't know, it felt like that was kind of the case in the second half, that you weren't seeing as much. You were seeing guys jump over screens a little bit more in the second half to stay on their guy. And obviously in the second half, you did a better job defending them. What did they finish with? They had 37, 38 in the first half. So they only finished with 24, 25 points in the second half. So obviously the second half defense was there to play for KU. But bottom line here for the Jayhawks, you went into this week with 2 road games, specifically one where you have lost the last 3 years. And you won both of them, including the second, by 24 points. And I get it. K-State's not a great team. But given that this was going to be their sellout for the conference season, given that they were going to have more energy, given that, they had some guys go off from 3 in the first half, and you were without Darryn Peterson yourself, to win by 24 is still super impressive for Kansas. And in the end, now you're sitting at 15-5. You're sitting at 5-2. You've got some momentum. You've won 4 straight games. Now is the difficult part of the schedule, right? You're home BYU, at Texas Tech, home against Utah. That should be one you win. But then home against Arizona, at Iowa State. Like, this is a brutal 5-game stretch coming up for KU. But you've grabbed some momentum going into it. You've started to feel better about what you are as a team. You built up the resume. You built up the record a little bit to afford maybe a loss or 2 during this stretch. And you're just in such a much better position than we were, literally 2 weeks ago, when you had lost at West Virginia by 11 and you were sitting at 11-5 and 1-2 in conference play. It is night and day, the feeling of success of where we're at with KU basketball. This time, as we were 2 weeks ago. All right, let's continue on with some of our game awards, moments of the game, all that and more. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now with FanDuel, users are getting a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app for every NFL playoff game day. Each game day, you'll see a loaded pack with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets that you like most. Open your profit boost pack the first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're back in momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. You make your picks, apply your profit boost, go after an even bigger payout while the playoffs are rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your NFL profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day with FanDuel. Thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks. Don't forget you can join the Everydayer Club. You can visit lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer, or it's in the show notes. You can get the ad-free version of Locked On Jayhawks, compatible with all your major podcast apps, and an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat for just Locked On Jayhawk fans. Again, lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. So this actually wound up being KU's second most efficient points per possession game of the season. The only game better was the Green Bay game. So this was actually KU's best against whatever way you want to skin it, like a power opponent, a top 100 opponent. So that was really impressive. Even though it was KU's sixth best effective field goal percentage game, because that's what's crazy. KU had their second most efficient offensive game in a game that they did not shoot well from three. Like, they actually shot poorly from 3-point range. And on top of it, like, this was like a below average game for KU in turnover rate offensively, but it was their best offensive rebounding game. It was top 6 free throw rate game for them. It was their third best 2-point percentage game. And you add all those up and it ended up being the second most efficient game for the KU offense. All right. Moments and plays of the game for KU. I don't know how Melvin Council fit in that one. First half transition play. So K-State had briefly taken the lead at I think 28-26. I think KU hits like 1 or 2 free throws. And then moments later, like, Melvin Council gets in transition and scores almost like I don't even know. His body was facing the other way. He hits like a finger roll to the side. I don't know how he fit that in there, but puts KU back up 29-28. That was really impressive there. There was a Bidunga poster to go up 35-31. That was really impressive at the end of the first half. I mean, in general, you could point to a lot of Bidunga posters late in the second half too. So you could pick a lot of those for kind of the play of the game. I thought, I don't know, like the Melvin to Flory alley-oop felt like KU's gonna take this one to make it 71-56. But honestly, one of my favorite moments of the game was a two-way moment from Flory in this one. There was a play where K-State was driving, and I forget who was on initial defense, but Flory came over for help defense, and he didn't get a block, but he clearly impacted the shot. And I think it might have even been an air ball. I don't remember, but they missed the shot at the rim, did K-State. KU grabs the rebound, goes down, and they're unable to get one of their initial actions going. And it ends up in the hands of Trey White, who then bounces it to Flory. The shot clock's starting to wind down. Flory has it kind of in the high post area, and he makes a really strong move, like off like one dribble, spin move, and lays it in over a 7-2 dude. And that was just a moment there of the defense to offense that Flory provides and being a big impact in this game that, to me, was because, again, like Melvin Council and Elmarko were stupendous for KU in the backcourt. But we always knew coming into this game, KU had the advantage down low and needed to take advantage down low. And so in a game where you had 37 and 17 combined from your two big men, I thought, to me, that was kind of the moment of the game. And at the time, it made it 64-55. So it was still kind of a closer game, and started to pull KU away in what ended up being that big run to the end of the game. Because at that point, again, it would have been 62-55. That means from that point on, KU outscored them 24-7 to the finish line here. Okay, the stat of the game for KU, I mean, a couple different ones you can go with here. I mean, the 2-point percentage obviously was such a drastic difference between these two teams, right? Like, I mean, Kansas did not, like I said earlier, shoot well from three, but they shot 27 of 42 on 2-point shots. That's 64%. You look at the 2-point defense for KU. It was KU's third best 2-point offense game. It was KU's second best 2-point defense game. K-State only shot 34% on twos. So you nearly doubled them up on 2-point percentage. I mean, that's got to be the stat of the game, right? If we are just pointing at others, KU getting 10 more free throws is obviously a big one. I think that comes with KU being a team who wanted to attack more inside, K-State being more of a jump shooting team, right? Part of that is kind of style of play and would kind of go back into that idea. I think the fact that KU wound up with only one offensive rebound less, obviously not ideal for the game, but given how far set back you were in the first half, the second half rebounding was a lot better and pretty important. KU ended up plus 10 in second chance points. They were plus 7 in bench points, but all bench points were from Elmarko Jackson. So those are some that you could kind of point to. And then this one just kind of wraps up the 2-point percentage difference where KU, nearly doubled up K-State, 46-18 in points in the paint for Kansas. If it's not the 2-point percentage difference, it's the point in the paint difference. That's a 28-point advantage. Although assists being 19-12, that's something you could point to there. But in the end, Kansas led for 35 minutes and 23 seconds of this game. So some good stats there, but we'll officially make it the 2-point percentage difference, 64% to like 34% for KU over K-State. Our awards of the game, of course this was going to happen of the game goes to some of K-State's shooters in the first half. So really two of them that we want to point to. Like we knew Haggerty came in as a good shooter. He only took 2. Castillo and Nate Johnson came in as good shooters, although Johnson just 1 of 5. But Taj Manning came in with 3 made threes on the season. He went 2 of 4. He hits 1 was in the first half. I can't remember if the second was in the first or the second half, but Kostic goes 4 for 4 in the first half, and he had like 3 made threes since December 20th. So that was going to happen against K-State for KU in Manhattan, but obviously KU was able to overcome it. And then this is a repeat award, one we've given out many times over the course of this season, and we'll give it out again right here because it continues to be a theme, if that's the right word here for KU, but it is I don't always get fouled, but when I do, it typically ends up being an and one, and that is the Melvin Council award that he has been getting over and over this season, and he gets again here today. Now, he did go to the free throw line one other time. He goes 2 for 3 at the line, but he has the one in transition that puts KU up, 66 to 55, and then he gets the free throw that he makes afterwards on the and one, and that was one where I think was continuation for KU that wouldn't have been a rule, just a couple of years ago, but is a rule now. And that's just something where it's like, it feels like Melvin Council is like the king of getting and ones. It doesn't always go to the free throw line, but when he does that's kind of the case. By the way, one quick note here, KU only played 7 guys without Darryn Peterson, right? No Cole Rosario, no Paul Mbia or anything like that. We saw Dawson, and even that was limited. That was 7 minutes of Jaden Dawson. It is clear Bill Self has found the guys that he trusts and wants to go with. And those are the guys getting minutes for KU. All right, let's finish up with little game balls. We'll give out an offensive, defensive, overall game ball for KU B-ball and look at what's next in this upcoming difficult schedule for KU. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling things. So for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a TurboTax expert local for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Visit Take Taxes Off Your Plate and get your life back by visiting TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. That's TurboTax.com/local. Thanks again for joining us here. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club by going to lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. Our Kansas wins 86-62 over Kansas State here. A really good road performance for the Jayhawks here in Manhattan. Let's give out some game balls. Start with the offensive game ball for KU. So KU ends up with a lot of double-digit scores. Trey White had 13, though he had a bit of a slower game. I mean, that's impressive too. KU was out. Darryn Peterson at one point. Trey White was like 1 of 5 or something. Jamar McDowell goes 0 of 5, and you still win by 24 on the road. Melvin Council at 17. The efficiency not quite as good as maybe some of the others. 7 of 16. It's not bad. It's just, but he did have 12 assists to 1 turnover. So that's pretty impressive. He also had 2 offensive rebounds here. Bryson Tiller had 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting, and he also had 3 offensive rebounds, plus he had 2 assists. Flory had 21 points on 10 of 13 with 3 offensive rebounds, if we're talking that end of the floor, with 1 assist. And then Elmarko Jackson gave you 19 points off the bench. So I'm going to go with Melvin Council here. I think in the case of Flory, a lot of those points came as the game was kind of wrapping up. I think Elmarko's contributions off the bench are gigantic, so I thought about giving it to him. I think Tiller's aggressiveness, and Tiller was kind of the steadying force, I think, for KU in the first half, and he was the most consistent offensive player throughout the game for KU, so I thought about him too. But at the end of the day, Council gave you 17. He gives you some big shots at the end of the game. He also, 12 assists, man. 12, that's as many as K-State had as a team. And he does it to just 1 freaking turnover. Plus, he had 2 offensive rebounds. So I think Council gets the offensive game ball here. A defensive game ball for KU. So only 2 steals for KU. That continues to be kind of a bugaboo that they're not forcing enough turnovers. Council had 1, Tiller had 1. Blocks, KU got 3 from Flory and 1 from Melvin Council. You look at defensive rebounds, Flory had 7 of them. Council had 5 of them. Elmarko had 5 of them. And then Tiller had 4 of them. And then you go over and take a look at what K-State did. Like, Haggerty was only 6 of 17. I know he finishes with 23 points because he got to the foul line, but that's a little bit of credit for, Melvin Council and guys who were picking him up to make him inefficient in doing so. Castillo was only 3 of 11. Nate Johnson was only 2 for 8. Like, overall, KU held K-State to 62 points for a team who wants to play fast and score a lot. I mean, that's kind of an overall defensive effort from KU. But I am going to give it to Flory Bidunga. The 3 blocks were huge, and there were other moments in the game where he was affecting things at the rim on the defensive end of the floor, plus leads KU in defensive rebounding. Obviously, he was a bit to blame for some of the offensive rebounding by K-State in the first half, so that's part of it, but he picked it up in the second half. He was still an elite rim protector for KU. That was part of K-State struggling so much from 2-point range. He had a big impact on the defensive side. So our overall game ball for KU, so we gave offense to Council, we gave defense to Flory. Let's give Bryson Tiller a nod here. Let's give Tiller we're going to share it. Tiller and Elmarko are going to get our overall game ball here, right? Because getting that production off the bench from Elmarko was huge for Kansas. And then from the Tiller perspective, he was the steadying force, right? He had 8 points in the first half. He had 8 points in the second half, right? When Flory gets in foul trouble, Tiller's allowing you to play those big minutes. And he just had a really productive, easy flowing game, goes 6 of 8 from the floor, steadied the KU offense in the half court at times. So yeah, we're just going to share the love. We'll give Council the offensive game ball. Flory gets the defensive game ball. Tiller and Elmarko share the overall game ball. And that's just kind of the game that it was for KU. So what's next for the Jayhawks? This is where the schedule gets difficult. BYU at home on Saturday, January 31st. If you missed it, BYU just had a 40-point game from AJ DeBonsa. They beat Utah by 13 points. DeBonsa had 43 points. He is very good. The big question is going to be, are we going to see DeBonsa versus Peterson? That's what everybody wants to see. The national college audience, the NBA draft audience. I mean, I want to see it. BYU fans want to see it, right? Hopefully he's back and healthy, because the ankle thing can be something that, it could be a 2-week thing, could be a 4-week thing, 6 week. It just kind of depends the severity for Peterson. So it'll be interesting what kind of happens there if we see that. But regardless, just from a team perspective, difficult game for KU. And we've seen KU lose to BYU the last 2 years since they've joined the Big 12. Then you're at Texas Tech, difficult place to play. They just beat Houston today. Then back home for one that you should win against Utah, and then versus Arizona at Iowa State. If you can go 3-2 during this 5-game stretch, I think you're going to like how you feel about this team, right? And to get to 3-2, that's either, winning all your home games and losing your 2 roadies, or if you go 2-1 at home, 1-1 on the road. I think 3-2 would be a good stretch here for KU, but that is easier said than done, because that is 4 top 20 opponents with 2 inside the top 5, one that you already beat at home and is going to be pissed off when you play them. And then, you get a couple games against Oklahoma State and Cincinnati, who are still decent teams, before you finish with Houston, Arizona, and then the Arizona State, K-State games that you should be favored in. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On Jayhawks.